Las Vegas has placed a $1 trillion bet on concrete, glass, and air conditioning, and if that bet fails, the city suffocates. Right now, on any given day, more than 2 million residents and hundreds of thousands of tourists are walled inside a metropolis built in the heart of a furnace. They work, play, and survive shielded by a single fragile defense system, the power grid, and that grid is beginning to buckle. The city's infrastructure was engineered for heat. It was not engineered for this kind of heat. A prolonged citywide blackout during a major heat wave is no longer a theoretical risk. It is an operational inevitability. Not an inconvenience, not a rolling brownout, a shutdown, a total system failure. So the city has been scrambling, pouring billions into a sprawling network of solar arrays and high-tech grid upgrades, a desperate attempt to out-engineer the rising temperatures. It should have been the answer, but here's what they never factored into the public relations campaign. The heat itself degrades the very infrastructure built to fight it. The power lines, the transformers, the solar panels, they all lose efficiency as the temperature climbs. And the demand for air conditioning during these heat events is now so extreme, it threatens to overwhelm the system entirely. So the defining question for the city's future is no longer about water. It's about energy. Did Las Vegas just build a solar-powered shield against the apocalypse, or did they simply install a more expensive air conditioner inside a city that is slowly being cooked alive? Before we dive into the engineering of this crisis, I have a question for the millions who have visited this city. What's the hottest you've ever felt it in Las Vegas? Let us know in the comments below. Hundreds of thousands of people watch these documentaries, but a huge number forget to subscribe. If you believe this kind of deep dive reporting is important, take 1 second to hit that subscribe button. It's a small click that makes a huge difference and ensures you don't miss what's coming next. Let's begin. Las Vegas was never meant to be comfortable. The first settlers who established a dusty outpost in this valley knew the sun was an adversary. They built with adobe and sought shade, living according to the rhythms of a desert that has always been indifferent to human ambition. For decades, the outpost remained just that, a stopover, a place to endure, not to inhabit. Then came the dam, the railroad, and the legal framework that would birth a global icon. But the one piece of technology that truly allowed Las Vegas to defy its environment was Carrier's 1902 invention, air conditioning. It was this machine, the ability to manufacture cold air, that ultimately broke the desert's veto power over the city's growth. The casinos of the 1950s weren't just selling games of chance, they were selling refuge. They were selling refrigerated air, a commodity more valuable than any jackpot in the middle of a Mojave summer. Air conditioning transformed the city from a seasonal destination into a year-round machine for commerce and entertainment. It allowed for the construction of glass towers under an unforgiving sun, the creation of sprawling suburbs on sun-scorched earth, and the explosion of a population that saw the desert not as a limit, but as a blank canvas. This growth was predicated on a fundamental assumption, that the energy required to cool the city would always be cheap, abundant, and reliable. That assumption is now failing. The very technology that enabled the city's existence is now the primary driver of its greatest vulnerability. The hotter the city gets, the more air conditioning it needs. The more air conditioning it runs, the more waste heat it pumps into the urban environment. The more waste heat it pumps, the hotter the city gets. It is a perfect feedback loop, and it is spiraling out of control. The infrastructure holding Las Vegas together is a miracle of modern engineering. It is also an antique. The city's power is delivered by NV Energy, a utility that manages a complex web of natural gas power plants, long-distance transmission lines, and a massive, growing portfolio of solar generation. All of it is fed into a local distribution grid of substations, transformers, and cables that must function flawlessly in some of the most extreme temperatures on the continent. The critical point of failure is not the power plants themselves. It's the components in the streets, the thousands of pole-mounted and pad-mounted transformers that step down high-voltage electricity for use in homes and businesses. These are rugged devices built to last for decades, but they have an enemy, and its name is heat. Transformers are essentially metal boxes filled with oil that cools the internal coils. As electricity passes through, heat is generated. The oil circulates, dissipates the heat, and keeps the unit operating within its design limits. But when the ambient air temperature climbs to 115 or 118 degrees Fahrenheit, that passive cooling process starts to fail. The oil can no longer shed heat fast enough. The internal temperature of the transformer begins to rise. Past a certain point, the oil starts to break down. The insulation on the coils degrades. The risk of a catastrophic failure and explosion increases exponentially with every degree. A single transformer blowing can take a neighborhood offline. A cascade of failures during a peak heat event could trigger a wider rolling blackout that affects hundreds of thousands of people. And that ambient air temperature is no longer a simple weather report. In Las Vegas, it's a manufactured condition. This is the urban heat island effect, and Las Vegas is a textbook case. A city in the desert should, in theory, cool down dramatically at night as the dry air releases its heat back into the atmosphere. But Las Vegas does not. The city's core can remain 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the surrounding desert scrubland. The reason is the city itself. The dark asphalt of the Strip and the endless parking lots absorb and retain solar radiation all day. The concrete and glass of the mega resorts act like thermal batteries, soaking up energy and bleeding it out slowly through the night. Add to that the waste heat pouring out of the cooling towers of more than 150,000 hotel rooms and millions of square feet of casino floor space. Every single air conditioning unit is a small furnace, pumping hot air out to make cold air inside. Multiply that by more than 1 million units across the valley. The result is a city that cooks itself. It creates a localized climate that is measurably hotter and more dangerous than the natural desert it replaced. This isn't a bug in the system. It is the system, and it is pushing the electrical grid toward a threshold it was never designed to cross. The official temperature readings, taken at the international airport, often fail to capture the brutal reality at street level. A patch of asphalt in a downtown parking lot can reach surface temperatures of 180 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cause second-degree burns, hot enough to warp the very infrastructure built on top of it. This manufactured heat puts a constant, grinding strain on every component of the electrical grid, 24 hours a day for months on end. What do you think is the single biggest threat to a city like Las Vegas? Water scarcity or extreme heat? It's a tough question, and I'm curious to see the debate in the comments. The city's response was characteristically ambitious. Faced with an escalating energy crisis and a state mandate to move toward renewable sources, Las Vegas went all in on the one resource it has in infinite supply: sunlight. The plan was monumental: to encircle the valley with some of the largest solar power plants ever conceived. Projects like the Gemini Solar Plus Storage Facility, a $1 billion venture covering more than 7,000 acres of federal land just outside the city. When it comes online, its 2.5 million solar panels will generate enough electricity to power more than 260,000 homes, and will feature a battery storage system capable of holding that power for use after the sun goes down. The scale is difficult to comprehend. The facility is a sea of dark glass and steel, an industrial footprint so vast it redraws the map of the Mojave Desert. It is just one of several massive solar projects intended to form an energy shield around the city. On paper, the logic is flawless. Turn the desert sun from an adversary into an asset. Generate clean local power to meet the growing demand for air conditioning. Decarbonize the grid and secure the city's energy future. It was supposed to be the ultimate engineering solution, a final victory over the desert. And yet, the solution came with a crippling paradoxical flaw. Solar panels work by converting photons from sunlight into electrons. The hotter the panel itself gets, the less efficiently it performs this conversion. It is a fundamental law of semiconductor physics. A solar panel rated to produce 400 watts under standard test conditions at a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, or 77 Fahrenheit, will see its output drop as its surface heats up. In the Mojave Desert, a panel's surface temperature can easily exceed 150 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, its power output can degrade by as much as 15 to 20%. The very condition that drives the city's peak energy demand, extreme heat, is the same condition that compromises the efficiency of its primary solution. During the most critical hours of a heat wave, when air conditioners are running at maximum capacity and the grid is under the greatest strain, the billions of dollars of solar infrastructure are all underperforming, generating less power precisely when the city needs it most. It's an engineering contradiction that no one has been able to solve. The second part of the strategy was to modernize the grid itself. NV Energy has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in smart grid technology, advanced sensors on transformers to monitor their temperature in real time, automated switches that can reroute power around a fault before it causes a major outage, sophisticated forecasting software that uses AI to predict energy demand block by block, hour by hour. It's an attempt to make the grid more resilient, more self-aware, more capable of handling the unprecedented loads that heat waves produce. But these upgrades are a race against a problem that is accelerating faster than the solutions can be deployed. A city that grows by tens of thousands of people a year, with developers building new suburbs ever deeper into the desert, adds new strain to the grid faster than it can be reinforced. Every new home, every new warehouse, every new casino expansion is another node of demand, another point of potential failure. The grid is not a static entity, it is a constantly expanding living system, and it is being pushed to its metabolic limit. The numbers are staggering. On a peak summer day, the energy demand in southern Nevada can be more than double the demand on a mild spring day. That entire spike, that massive surge in consumption, is almost entirely driven by one thing: air conditioning. It is not a broad-based increase across all sectors. It is a desperate collective effort to stay cool. This creates a demand curve that is less a curve and more a vertical wall. The grid must be built to handle that absolute peak, a peak that might only last for a few hours on a few dozen days of the year. The rest of the year, that capacity sits idle. It is an incredibly inefficient and expensive way to run a power system. A system built not for average use, but for moments of pure survival. If you're finding this analysis valuable, take a moment to hit the like button. And if you have family or friends who love Vegas, sharing this video might start a surprising conversation. It helps the channel more than you know. The crisis is no longer a forecast. It is a lived reality. The summer of 2023 was a brutal warning. Las Vegas recorded one of its hottest Julies in history, with temperatures soaring to 116 degrees and staying above 90 degrees overnight for weeks on end. The city became a landscape of emergency alerts and public cooling centers. The physical toll was immediate. Asphalt buckled on airport taxiways. Flights were delayed or canceled, not because of storms, but because the air was too hot and thin for some aircraft to generate sufficient lift. The human cost was even starker. Emergency rooms saw a surge in patients suffering from heat exhaustion and life-threatening heat stroke. The city's unhoused population, with little access to reliable shelter or air conditioning, faced the most acute risk. For them, a broken-down car or a missed bus could become a death sentence. The city's own coroner's office reported a spike in heat-related deaths, a grim statistic that underscores the lethal nature of the threat. The experience changed the texture of daily life. Construction crews shifted their hours, starting work at 3 a.m. to avoid the deadliest heat of the afternoon. Parks became ghost towns after 10 a.m. Tourists, lured by the promise of spectacle, found themselves confined to the air-conditioned arteries connecting casinos, warned by hotel staff not to venture outside for too long. The city that bills itself as a playground was forced to issue warnings that sounded more like survival instructions. Stay hydrated, seek shade, limit outdoor activity. It was an admission that the environment had become hostile. The manufactured reality of the city was cracking, and the raw, unforgiving nature of the Mojave was breaking through. The response from the utility was to issue flex alerts, voluntary calls for energy conservation during peak hours. Residents were asked to turn up their thermostats, to avoid using major appliances, to reduce their personal contribution to the strain on the grid. It was a civic appeal in the face of a systemic crisis, and while conservation helps at the margins, it doesn't change the fundamental math. The baseline energy demand for keeping the city's core infrastructure, the hospitals, the airports, the data centers, the casinos, operational is immense and non-negotiable. You cannot ask a Bellagio or a Caesar's Palace to simply turn off its air conditioning. The entire economic model of the city is built on defying the heat, not succumbing to it. A citywide blackout during a 115-degree afternoon is a scenario that keeps emergency planners awake at night. It is not just about discomfort. It is about mass casualties. Within hours, the indoor temperatures of high-rise buildings would begin to climb. The elderly and medically vulnerable would be at immediate risk. The city's water system, which relies on electric pumps, could fail. Communications would break down. The logistical challenge of evacuating or providing aid to more than 2 million people trapped in a superheated urban core is almost unimaginable. This is the real stakes of the energy crisis. It is not about the price of electricity. It is about the physical habitability of the city itself. I know we mentioned it before, but if you're still with us and haven't subscribed, now's the time. We've got a lot more ground to cover, and your support keeps these deep dives going. The solar fields were built, the grid was upgraded, the public was warned, and it is still not going to be enough. The scientific consensus is clear and terrifying. The American Southwest is on the front lines of global climate change. The heat waves that were once considered rare, once-a-century events, are now becoming the new summer baseline. Projections from climate scientists at institutions like the Scripps Institution of Oceanography and NOAA are no longer ambiguous. They model a future for Las Vegas that is significantly hotter and drier, a future with more days per year over 110 degrees, longer and more intense heat waves, and warmer nights that offer no relief. The engineering of the past was based on a stationary climate, on historical weather data that was assumed to be a reliable guide to the future. That assumption is broken. The city is now planning for a future that is actively changing, where the goalposts are constantly moving, and the worst-case scenarios of yesterday are becoming the probable outcomes of tomorrow. The most frightening part of this new reality is a concept that goes beyond simple temperature. It's called wet bulb temperature. This is a measurement that combines ambient heat with humidity. It indicates the point at which the human body can no longer cool itself by sweating, because the surrounding air is too saturated with moisture for perspiration to evaporate. A sustained wet bulb temperature above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 Celsius, is considered non-survivable for more than a few hours, even for a healthy person resting in the shade. While the Mojave is famously dry, The summer monsoon season brings surges of humidity from the Gulf of California. A combination of extreme heat and elevated humidity could push parts of the Southwest toward that lethal threshold. Las Vegas, with its massive water features and irrigated landscapes, can create its own localized pockets of humidity, further increasing the wet bulb risk. This isn't a distant abstract threat. In recent years, parts of the Middle East and South Asia have already briefly crossed this non-survivable threshold. The climate models show that the risk for the American Southwest is rising. It introduces a horrifying new dimension to the problem, one where air conditioning is not a luxury or a comfort, but the only thing standing between the population and a physically unsurvivable outdoor environment. And if the power that runs the air conditioning fails, there is no backup plan. Beneath the immediate threat to the power grid, a slower, more insidious problem is taking root. The heat is fundamentally altering the physical city. Concrete and asphalt expand and contract with extreme temperature swings, leading to premature cracking and degradation of roads and foundations. Water pipes buried beneath superheated asphalt are under increased stress, raising the risk of main breaks. Even the planes that fly into the city's airport face new challenges. The hot, thin air reduces engine performance and lift, forcing airlines to restrict passenger numbers or cargo loads on the hottest days, imposing a direct economic cost. These are the cascading failures that a single-minded focus on the power grid can miss. The heat is not just an energy problem, it is a materials science problem. It is a civil engineering problem. The entire built environment is being subjected to stresses it was never designed to endure, day after day, year after year. The maintenance costs are astronomical. The long-term integrity of the city's physical form is being silently compromised. The city's foundations are being cooked from within. The solar shield may generate power, but it cannot stop the asphalt from melting. The smart grid might reroute electricity, but it cannot keep the water mains from bursting. The problem is holistic. The solutions have been compartmentalized, and the gap between them is growing wider. Las Vegas is not an anomaly. It is a harbinger. It is the most acute version of a story that is unfolding across the entire Sunbelt. Cities like Phoenix, Dallas, and Miami are all grappling with the same lethal combination of extreme heat, aging infrastructure, and rapid population growth. Phoenix, a city of 1.6 million people in the Sonoran Desert, is facing an even more severe urban heat island effect. They have appointed a chief heat officer, a cabinet-level position dedicated solely to mitigating the effects of rising temperatures, a first for any major American city. They are experimenting with cool pavement technologies, specialized coatings that reflect more sunlight and absorb less heat. The results are promising, lowering surface temperatures by 10 to 12 degrees. But the cost of deploying it citywide is staggering, and its effect on the overall ambient air temperature is still marginal. It cools the ground. It does not cool the air. What Las Vegas represents is the ultimate test case, a city with immense financial resources, world-class engineering talent, and a singular political will to survive. If Las Vegas, with its billions in casino revenue and its capacity for audacious, mega-scale projects, cannot engineer a lasting solution to the problem of extreme heat, what does that mean for other cities with fewer resources and more complex political landscapes? The uncomfortable truth is that there may not be an engineering solution, not in the way we have come to understand it. Building more power plants, laying more reflective pavement, planting more trees. These are all acts of adaptation. They are defensive measures in a battle against a force that is orders of magnitude larger. They are attempts to manage the symptoms of a global phenomenon at a local level, but they do not solve the underlying disease. The planet is getting hotter, the desert is expanding, and Las Vegas is built on ground that is becoming increasingly hostile to human life. Alright, I know, it's the third time I'm asking, but seriously, if you made it this far, you're one of us. Hit subscribe, it's the law. Just kidding, but please do it. The story of Las Vegas is no longer a simple tale of triumph in the desert. It is something far more complex, a narrative of perpetual high-stakes crisis management.